I'm Emily Spicer and I'm senior producer for live events at Scriberia, and I'm dialing in from London today. So hello to everyone and thanks for joining me. I'm going to talk today a bit about what Scriberia is, because we're quite a niche company, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how it all began. Then I'm going to go into what scribing is and what it is as a skill. So if you're a creative, and especially if you are a creative who kind of draws or enjoys drawing as a pastime, then how you might be able to convert scribing as kind of another skill in your arsenal. And then the main meat of the talk is going to be Scriberia's top 10 creativity rules, which can be applied to any creative process, really. So I hope that they're helpful regardless of what kind of avenue you're working in. And I also love to chat. So I think we're going to have some time at the end, but I've got a lot to cover. But I am here live, so feel free to ask anything in the chat or get me on the swap card, you know, homepage or email me, whatever you want. I'm really happy to talk about anything that I don't cover or anything you're interested in. So Scriberia. So at Scriberia, we help our clients to think, work and communicate in a visual world. And we call ourselves the home of hardworking pictures. So we're the kind of global go-to agency for making art that works. So we say we don't make works of art, we make art that works. And we do that for clients of all shapes and sizes in almost every sector you can think of, but it's mostly sectors that have a lot of data or complexity that needs to be communicated efficiently with a human tone. And they're the kind of things that people come to us for. So we're best known for what the company started out doing, which is live scribing. It's also kind of it can be called graphic facilitation in other areas, but we call it live scribing. And simply put, people talk and our scribes listen and draw what they hear. So we do that at big public facing conferences like what you're seeing on this slide. But our main bread and butter is internal sessions, strategy meetings, training sessions, things like that. And it can involve a lot of prep or hardly any prep at all. And since the pandemic, we now do the majority of that work virtually. So we are getting asked to do some on-site events again, which is exciting. But the majority of the work we've been doing throughout the pandemic is digital, online, and we share our screen with the clients in real time. So it's a very similar situation. It's just a lot faster and a lot of a smaller piece of artwork, really, smaller canvas to work on. We also make a lot of hardworking pictures in-house. So I just want to show you some of these just so you can see the difference, so that when I go back to talk about live scribing, you can understand kind of what it is and what it isn't. So here are some kind of spot illustrations for presentations and things like that. Then we have vision maps, infographics and murals, which are all done in-house. We also make animations or moving pictures. And we also run workshops via our academy. So off the back of our book, How to Draw Anything, these are workshops that kind of teach the principles of visual thinking to organizations so that they can use drawing in their day-to-day lives and kind of get to the heart of their own problems in a more engaging and effective way, hopefully. So how did it all begin? So Scriberia was founded by Chris and Dan. So Chris Wilson on the left comes from an animation, gaming and TV background. And Dan Porter on the right trained as an art historian. So he was part of the team that launched the Tate Modern. And essentially after they had varied paths through life and they started freelancing, and they were freelancing a number of different kind of side hustles, I guess you'd say, of which scribing was one of them. And at that time, it was a very closed circle of people who it was mainly working in consultancies. And sometimes it was consultants who'd learned to draw, and sometimes it was artists who'd learned to kind of consult a bit. So Dan had actually set up the domain name Scriberia kind of years earlier, thinking, if I had an imaginary scribing business, wouldn't Scriberia be a cool name? So he kind of parked that and set that up. And then he met Chris and he met some other people as well along the way. And Dan and Chris just decided to put their work on a website and call it Scriberia and see what happened. And I also want to say that this was kind of, so Scriberia has been going for about 12 years now. So when they did this, it was shortly after the financial crisis, when drawing was seen as kind of a nice to have, but not necessarily a must have. But Chris and Dan both saw how useful and efficient drawing as a tool could be for businesses. And they believed it could do so much more still and kind of be a bit more magical than kind of what they were seeing. So they just went with it and they put that, it was just a portfolio website. And although we've always been called Scriberia and we've always wanted to visualize people's thinking, so you can see our first logo on the left and our newer logo on the right, kind of how we communicate about ourselves has changed a lot over the 12 years, from, you know, the fonts we use, the colors we use. We've always had a fairly clear message, but the different products and services we offer has changed. And I just say this because I think a lot of people look at us, if you do know of us, and think we're so kind of, we're very clear and concise in our message, but ultimately progress is better than perfection. And your brand should grow and adapt as the world changes around you, as you grow personally, and as your clients' needs change. So don't let that hold you back. Like, focus on the work you produce and the experience you give to your clients, and the rest will follow. So back to Dan and Chris. So drawing was their childhood superpower. It's what made them stand out. It's what gave them confidence, and it's what helped them to communicate. But as time progressed and they started to make drawing, you know, their living, it felt like less of a carefree friendship. Now drawings worked for them and they were doing a decent job at it, but drawing was limited by their imaginations and shaped by their own strengths and weaknesses. So when they set up Scriberia, they began working collectively, and ultimately they had to remove themselves from their personal relationship with drawing. Something that was their passion and felt special to them became, you know, the business. And as the company grew, eventually they didn't care who drew what, as long as that drawing got to a solution for the client. So with simplicity at its core, all Scriberians ask themselves, is this clear? Does it achieve the aim? Is there a more efficient way of doing it? Where's the focus and what can we leave out? And I think that last one is absolutely key, because this is not just how we produce the work, but also how we run the business internally as well. So these questions are clear in our processes, in our goals, in the way we communicate with each other and with clients. You know, how can we get to the end point quicker and better? So scribing as a skill. So what skills do you need to be a great scribe? There's a lot to do as a scribe in a very short amount of time. So we break it down into what we call the 4 pillars of scribing, which are comprehension, so listening, understanding, synthesizing; interpretation, which is bringing the idea to life, adding your wit, humor, creative flair; structure, which is how the image reads, and this is where kind of graphic design skills can come in quite handy. So kind of, yeah, how you lead the eye, whether there are, you know, big messages or smaller messages in the image. And then finally, style. So your style needs to be versatile enough to be fast. It needs to be easily read by anyone from visually literate people to not so visually literate people. And it needs to be flexible for different clients, different industries, and able to mirror others sometimes if you're like a scribe crew on a big job. And I just wanted to show you some of our scribes' personal work against their scribing, because it can look very different, and it's quite a difficult mindset for a lot of illustrators or artists to get into. Because when you scribe, you have to work fast, and the images you produce need to be efficient. And so many illustrators kind of can start off feeling quite disappointed with the work they're producing in the time, and they try to do too much, or they're trying to impress themselves too much. and actually adapting your style to something that is flexible, versatile, and easy to do live, and that the client can see themselves in, is really key to success. So what else does it take to be a great scribe? So first up is just practice, practice, practice. Scribing is without a doubt a learned skill, and I think this is true of kind of any creative endeavor, really. There's little room for error on a live job, so coming up with great ideas at speed and rendering them well comes from constant development. And I think this is true if you're in, we're talking a lot about ideas today, and I think, you know, that a lot of people think, oh, there are the ideas people, and then there are the strategy people, and then there are those people. But actually, like, it's a learned skill, and it's getting your brain into a new way of working. And scribing is definitely true of that. Being confident and friendly and approachable on site with clients is super, super important. A lot of artists can be very shy. They can be a bit kind of wishy-washy sometimes. It's a bit like herding cats, getting scribes to jobs sometimes. But it's really important that, you know, you can put the client at ease, because there's a good chance they're going to be risking quite a lot by hiring you. It's probably something they haven't used before, especially in the corporate world. And so putting them at ease, making them feel comfortable and calm is going to really help you. It's going to get them off your back, and it's going to let you just crack on and do your best work. And finally, organization and perseverance. So I can't stress these two things enough, really. Like, you've got to be really thick-skinned to be a great scribe. And you've got to be ready for anything. Live work can really throw curveballs at you. So you need to be able to just stay calm and crack on. When things go wrong, find a solution. You're probably going to be on site on your own. You might not have anyone else from Scriberia or with you on site. So, you know, making sure you feel like you've got everything you need and you can just, you know, deal with any situation is really, really, really helpful. Okay, so now we are on to our creativity rules. So all of our in-house creatives work with these rules in mind. And like I said earlier, I hope that whatever creative work you do, so whether that's writing or, for me, production, that they'll help in some way. So the first rule is embrace constraints. So one of Scriberia's key values is clarity of purpose. And we unpack our briefs by using a method called inside the box. And the box represents the boundaries of a project. Once you've got clear boundaries in place, you no longer have this kind of endless list of creative possibilities, and you become focused. And so for scribes, that's things like, you know, the time on site, the materials they've got available to them, the tools, what the client's needs are. All of these things are going to affect how they approach a job. And the more creative that they can then be within that box, the better the work's going to be. Rule number 2 is stay curious. So you need to feed your machine. You need to fill your brain with imagery, ideas, connections. You also need to be conscious of your client's world and, you know, what's affecting them as humans, what's affecting their business, what cultural things might apply to them. And it's when those two worlds collide, kind of your passions and your, you know, the things that spark your interest and then the client's world, that's when magical things happen. Which moves us on quite nicely to rule 3, which is make connections. So our job at Scriberia is to create images that connect people to the ideas that their business or their organization needs them to engage with. And often that engagement comes when a kind of an idea is paired with a more surprising idea, because then what's meaningful simultaneously becomes memorable. So the further you reach outside of your field of expertise, then the fuller your kind of slot machine of the mind becomes, and the more powerful those creative connections will become over time. Rule number 4 is just start drawing. So get things out of your head and see what you mean. So drawing allows us to, you know, give ourselves a bird's eye view of a problem, and it also encourages us to ask others to see, understand, and build on the idea. So just have fun with it and just start drawing or start doing something that gets the idea out of your head. And in that same breath, rule number 5 is fail fast. So on a live job, you can't get bogged down if something goes wrong. Like if you're trying to visualize something and you can't think of an idea that works and you can't make sense of it, you've got to move on because the talk will be finished before you have a chance to catch up. So learning to move on, learning to start fresh, learning to focus elsewhere, these are all key to kind of moving forward, and especially for scribes, finding that they will have finished with something they're proud of. And then internally, like the more ideas we have out of our heads and on paper, the quicker we're going to find a solution that actually works. So in the same way as start drawing, you've got to start somewhere and just get your ideas moving, get yourself out there. Rule number 6 is to simplify, keep it simple. So this is really a Scriberia mantra. And we always say that drawing is decision making. So every stroke, every mark you make on the page, you know, you need to be asking yourself, is this clarifying or confusing? Especially with scribing, it's really important that you get to the point and you capture what is essential. And then if there's time, you add flourish, but only if it helps tell the story. And I can't stress this enough. I think that, you know, it's so easy as creatives to just add a bit more. You know, I kind of draw and paint in my spare time as well. And I'm never happy with what I've created. But when you're creating work for a client, you've got to really think of the purpose and just really keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Rule number 7 is to push the idea. And this is where we say, be brave. So taking risks comes with experience, of course, but all risks are risks and you have to be willing to take some. You know, like I said earlier, it's when the two worlds collide that kind of magical things happen. So providing you are empathizing with the client's world, you know, be brave about the way you represent their ideas because they want to be surprised and delighted. And they want to see things differently. You know, that's why they're coming to someone outside of their organization. That's why they're going externally. So, and if you get it wrong, you'll fix it. You know, they will let you know. So for scribing as a kind of, as an idea, let's say someone's scribing and they're talking about idea generation and all you can think to draw is a light bulb. We get that a lot, fine. So how can you push that? You know, is the light bulb a hot air balloon taking ideas to new heights? Is it a garden of light bulb flowers waiting to be cultivated? Like any way that you can add an extra layer of meaning to something recognizable to make it really relevant to that particular conversation is going to make the work stand out. Rule number 8 is be the audience. So empathy is such an important skill and we've touched on it a little bit already. But a lot of the images we create are for many different audiences. And that's where simplicity and working inside the box all come into play. So I said it earlier, like when you're visually literate and you're working creatively, it's very easy to assume that everyone else is coming to it from the same standpoint as you. And it's also easy to be a bit self-indulgent and want to show off. So our founder, Chris, always says that his mom is his imaginary audience. And in considering how his mom's going to see it, it keeps him focused. It makes sure that he's a good storyteller. And ultimately, it ensures that he's not leaving anyone out of the conversation, which is really, really important. So when you're scribing, you know, some of your audience may not have attended the talk at all, and that's why they're looking at the artwork. Maybe you've worked with subject matter experts who are really deep in the weeds, but they want to show the image to people who don't know what they're talking about. And at a conference, you know, as simple as you've got people right at the back of the room compared to people right at the front of the room, you know, what are they seeing from your board? A really great scribe is going to take all of this into account. Rule number 9 is have fun. So if we're stuck, we just change the conversation completely. We'll tell a story, we'll tell a joke. You know, what have you seen recently? What did you watch last night? You know, how can we give our brains a little bit of a break to just digest something new and make a new connection? And when joy and happiness works its way back into your work, your audience will feel it, people will notice that. So as much as possible, have fun with the work you're doing. And that leads us on quite nicely actually to rule 10, which is sleep on it. So unfortunately for scribes, this one is a little trickier to manage because they can't have a little nap on the job. But lots of our scribes do over plan. You know, they'll spend all night kind of drawing everyone's portraits or practice drawing certain bits of machinery and so on. And you'll turn up on the day and a speaker will be sick or something will have changed, or, you know, they're not going to spend as much time on that anymore. And it's much more important to get a good night's sleep, look after your mental health, just kind of try and go with the flow on the day. You're going to get a much better output and you're going to enjoy it more. And in-house, of course, you know, if we're hitting a brick wall and we've exhausted other methods, then definitely sleeping on it is usually the best solution. So there you have it. Those are Scriberia's creativity rules. I'm just going to run through them real quick. So we've got embrace constraints, stay curious, make connections, start drawing, fail fast, keep it simple, push the idea, be the audience, have fun and sleep on it. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening. We're at Scriberian on Instagram if you want to go and check us out there, and feel free to add me on LinkedIn or come and say hello to me on the swap card thing. I'm very happy to chat. Thanks very much.